Big thing. This is a big day in Kenya. In fact, with that Gazette notice should have come a declaration of a public holiday. Yeah. These people don't get these things, do they? They just don't get it.
Don't you get enough of holidays, Eric?
No, nobody.
There are too many holidays.
There's
even another
enough.
one coming in tomorrow. No, Monday. Yeah. Sunday and Monday.
Sunday and Monday. Yeah. Right? Mm-hmm. And then another one within the next 60 days or so, there will be another public holiday for swearing in of a new DP. Right?
I thought the DP will be unveiled in Kwale.
Sasa nyinyi ndio mtatuambia. Nyinyi ndio mtatuambia. The reason why these two gentlemen are here, and who are the two gentlemen? Now, I want to take you back again into the journey of our 2010 constitution. After our failed attempt in 2005, there was a fresh attempt. And that parliament, what parliament was it?
10th.
It was the 10th parliament of 2008 to 2013, decided, we have got to realize our constitution now. Let us put in timelines on how this thing is going to work. Let us set up a committee whose focus will solely be on delivering a constitution. It was called the Parliamentary Select Committee on Constitution Review. It had several members, and the chairman was the then MP for Mandera North, Abdikadir Mohamed. They sat down. They looked at what do we need. We need a committee that will look at these things. We call them committee of experts. The other one, we call them Constitution Review Commission. No, this one, let's call it committee of experts. Let's bring in local and international expertise and put it in there so we can get a constitution. The committee needed a secretariat. They picked one person to be the head of the secretariat, the CEO, Dr. Ekuru Aukot, was the CEO of that committee of experts on constitution review. They worked diligently, very hard. They looked at very many constitutions, including the unwritten constitution of the UK, and they gave us the harmonized draft constitution. And then Abdikadir and his pals went to Naivasha.
And thereafter.
And they did the thing that they did. Then we had a referendum, and the people by a big majority voted yes, and we promulgated a new constitution. And to implement the constitution, we needed now various things to happen. So Abdikadir's committee now became the Implementation Oversight Committee.
A new committee, actually.
A new committee.
First one was disbanded and a new committee.
A new one formed. But because this guy had done a very good job of chairing the other one and midwifing the constitution.
And people were happy with him.
Yeah, the 10th parliament was like, who else do we... Surely. Let's give the same guy. He knows this journey. So Abdikadir became the chair of the new one, right? The committee oversighting the implementation of the constitution. The proper name for it was the Constitution Implementation
CIOC.
Oversight Committee.
Yes.
And then Ekuru Aukot's job ended, akapewa gratuity, kaenda nyumbani, akaenda kuandika katiba sijui Liberia sijui wapi. South Sudan, right? Now they're both here. Because they know this Constitution of Kenya 2010 very well, that's why we thought, let's actually bring these two gentlemen so we can look at where we are at and where we're heading. Karibuni sana.
Asante sana.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, and good to see you, Dr. after many months or moons.
Many moons, eh?
Yes.
Yeah, you guys did a good job.
Asante.
City will therefore give you the day's proverb. Of course, City goes to an African country, and he brings proverbs from that country. I don't know whether Ekuru you have tried to work on their constitution. Which country are we?
We are in the People's Democratic Republic of Algeria.
No, I only went to Tunisia.
And Egypt also. We met in Egypt.
Yes.
Yes.
You did
No.
Well, we are in a panel of experts after the Arab Spring.
Yes.
You've done a wonderful thing. Brothers can now compare notes.
Very good.
Very good.
Yes.
Okay. This is our final day of Proverbs from this wonderful country. A country that is bordered by Tunisia, Libya, Niger, Mali, Western Sahara, Morocco, the Mediterranean Sea. Yes, and whose capital is Algiers, and its population is just 46 million people. They are not few. Right. The proverb. The absent always has a justification.
The absent
always has
a justification.
Yes.
What's your interpretation of this one, Abdikadir?
Absent always has a justification. We have not directly, but a fairly similar in the Somali language, that maybe, if that is the meaning, that those who wish to lie will pick somebody absent as a witness. So probably.
Say it in Kisomali. Then low.
Yes.
Then low. I'm somewhere close. Say it.
But it comes from the witness.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
Actually, it is that those who wish to lie pick for a witness somebody absent or the camel herder, because most likely the camel herder is away.
Safi. Ekuru, what's yours?
So absent as a justification.
Yes, the absent always.
The absent always has justification.
Yes.
I think, for me, I'll put it very simply. There is a reason why we do things or we do not do things. Just like there's a reason why Gachagua has been impeached.
Or there was a hospital visit.
Exactly. Yes. That's a nice one.
There is a reason.
There's a reason why Gachagua has been impeached.
Yes.
Or why he was absent in the Senate.
What?
To defend.
Tell me, Dr. Aukot, in the Constitution as it is written now, in the spirit and letter of the Constitution, why was a presidential candidate forced to join in the hip with a running mate?
Yeah, I think, first of all, I think it was about actually the importance of the presidency itself, the importance of that office. And let me take you back, Kenyans, to Article 139, if I'm not wrong. See, Article 139 of the Constitution, this is death before assuming office. That's the importance they placed in the presidency. And of course, it was about also succession planning, so that we don't have to have a by-election when a president dies. Or, you remember, we came back from the era of Khan where Moi will just pick anybody and will fire them willy-nilly as he wishes. And I think that was very disruptive. And I think we wanted an elegant system process where there is succession. So you are all actually qualified to be president. And Article 139 is very clear. For example, should the president die, election is cancelled. That is the premium we are putting on the president.
The candidate.
A candidate. Yeah. Even before, even the deputy president. Even the deputy president, when he dies before we go into election, again, the election is actually cancelled. So the obligation was placed on the person wanting to be president. Pick somebody who is your equivalent, like first among equals. Pick somebody who is equivalent, who can help you. And if you look at the provisions of Article, I think 147, that says about that the deputy president shall be the principal assistant and shall deputize the president. In other words, actually, is a president in waiting. So we do not want this thing of by-election. And election in Kenya is very costly. I'm sure if you bring an IBC person here to crack for you the figures, for an economy such as ours, we thought, why can't we, just have an elegant, presidency going forward, so that should the president be impeached, for example, on the grounds be impeached or removed on the grounds of incapacity, as Article 140 or 144, I think, prescribes, then I think there will be a successor who is equally fast like him.
Yeah.
Something I didn't understand when you said referring to the death of either the president or the deputy
before election,
the candidates
before
election,
an election,
before assuming office.
Did I hear you to be saying that then that process is nullified?
Yes, it's cancelled. We go back to the drawing board.
We go back to the drawing board.
Article 139 of the Constitution. That's how much premium we have placed on the presidency. So that even when we must remove a president or a deputy president, we must think twice.
And so that you don't go shooting around your opponent, assuming we are only two, I have sorted you out, I'm then going to go have an easy ride becoming a president.
So even for you who is malicious, who's thinking that Abdikadir is my competitor, let me abduct him.
You cannot
do that. And that's why the state will provide security for both the president and the deputy president during electionary time. So long as you've been cleared.
As soon as you're nominated by ABC.
Right. Then already the security apparatus kicks in to protect you. Because we cannot afford to nullify an election.
Right. So then after an election of Abdikadir, and those two assume office, the president and the deputy president, right? So then there's the provision now that's given on how they work, And if there is any need to create vacancy in that office, well, not need. If a vacancy were to occur in that office, there are several ways. One, they can resign.
Yeah.
Two.
Yeah. Yeah. So just first of all, just like the Chief Justice and Deputy Chief Justice, the President and the Deputy President, the processes are almost a mirror. Removing a president, the qualification, or they are mirror of, because as Dr. said, you are essentially a president in waiting. So they can resign. They could die, human beings. They could live by way of incapacity. And there is a procedure for doing that.
Yeah.
So for example, many thought the current president of the US isn't fit to hold that office. Typically what happens is they have a procedure under their constitution. We have a procedure under our constitution where if that was the case, there is a process by which you can now confirm that this has happened, and they are very clear. And the key, the star actor then is the Chief Justice setting up a tribunal, and then you could be impeached. You could be impeached, where now the forum is the political. Is the political actually? Let me
arena.
Yeah, the political arena. But let me just backtrack a little bit. You said elected, right?
Yes.
So when you are elected, the first way you can be is an election petition. So you could immediately after your election be told, okay, you are elected, but you are not validly elected. So that's the first. The second is you could resign a week later and say, it's not the way.
In 2017.
Yes. So there you go. So you could say, maybe this is not what I signed for.
I didn't sign up for this thing.
There you go. And then nature could take its course, and you could pass on, and then you could be found incapacitated. You could be found not to have capacity to be president or deputy president, and then you could be impeached. So the way I like looking at it is two of them really, either death or you resigning, don't require, they require processes, but not really very controversial processes. It's you resigning or God deciding you are not
resigning you.
These other three have very elaborate processes. The first one is election petition. An election petition of the president and the deputy president is different from all other election petitions. All other election petitions, the holder sits in office while the case goes on.
Yeah.
These two are required not to sit in office, to cool their heels while the case goes on, out of our constitutional history. The second is the specific court handling this is specified. So election petition for the president, deputy president, Supreme Court only.
Yeah.
So those who say, for example, that the High Court has unlimited jurisdiction, the Constitution says this one, none of your business, Mr. High Court. This is the business of the Supreme Court. Only. Why, in my opinion? So that you have limited time. Remember, the president is sitting out.
Yeah.
He or she is not doing the job. You want to have, so you don't want to go through High Court, Court of Appeal, all the way to the Supreme Court. Yes.
Just walk us through this again.
Yes.
When the president and the deputy are sitting out, what do you mean?
So they are president-elect. They are not in office. Actually, if you remember,
they have been elected and there is an issue, so they have not been sworn in.
They have been elected, and the Constitution says you should not be sworn in for this period to see whether somebody is going to challenge your election by way of an election petition.
Okay.
And if the election petition actually comes, which is almost always the case, then we are going to have a month or so to sort out all that business, so that by the time now you are assuming office, there is no legal challenge to your election, or the petition has succeeded and now we are going for a by-election.
Which means the outgoing president still holds on.
Yes. So the outgoing president, so for example, look at the American setup. November is when the election happens.
And 20th January.
January is when the president is sworn. That period, we have a similar period. Ours is about a month. So the former president holds office. And by the way, there are certain things he or she can't do in that period. In the period when he or she is holding over, there are certain powers
are
denied.
removed.
They are denied because their term is essential. But let's go to the earlier process.
Right.
And the reason I'm going to the details is because some people think tulibahatisha, hatukubahatisha. So the my view is the lawyers who feel that the current impeachment process needs to then be subjected to a very long court process assume that, okay, we stated this is the impeachment process. Nowhere in that article is there a reference to court or the High Court or the Supreme Court. And the lawyers who go to that then say, look, you need to now go to the chapter on the judiciary and the chapter on the plenary powers of the High Court, which are unlimited. And it's true. The High Court has unlimited jurisdiction, prima facie. And say now, then we need to subject the impeachment process to a very long court process, starting with an ex parte hearing by one judge, like happened with the president for the governors, with the current governor for Meru, where a single judge ex parte gives a stay order, and then all the way to the appeals process, you go through the High Court, you go through the Court of Appeal, you go through the Supreme Court. And for the Wambora case, that took 4 years. That took 4 years, and by the time the process was done, Wambora had served his term. And the interesting bit was, at the High Court said he was not properly impeached. He was not properly impeached. And not only was he not properly impeached, but because they had given an interim order while the process was at the county assembly, that the county assembly speaker, having disregarded the order, was guilty of contempt.
Right.
And the Court of Appeal agreed with the High Court. But the Supreme Court, rightly in my view, said he was properly impeached and he should not have been holding office. Now, why I come to this long process is, if we were to subject, in my opinion, and that now is not the very popular view right now, because of our politics and because of the unpopularity of Parliament, that is not a very popular view. And because most lawyers naturally are inclined towards giving people the right to hearing, the entire elaborate processes and our court processes. I'm a lawyer. I definitely understand that. I absolutely agree that our current parliament is bure kabisa. In fact, as Kibaki would say, bloody bure kabisa. But think about it. If you were to subject, not a deputy, but or a governor, but if you were to subject a presidential impeachment to a court process after the impeachment,
right?
How does it start? You must have 1/3 of the members of the National Assembly agreeing to start. Just turning that key.
Yes.
You require a third of the
MPs.
Then you need to have 2/3 agree with you after the process. And then don't stop there. Go to the other house. Go to the other chamber. And then you have a process. And after that, 2/3 agree with you. Now, after all that, go to a single judge in the High Court. And then go through the High Court process, very slow, go to the Court of Appeal. My view is, practically speaking, you will have neutered impeachment, number one. Number two, impeachment is an oversight mechanism by the political arm. So, for example, we want our parliamentarians or our parliament to hold executive officials accountable. How does it do that? The most potent weapon they have is the impeachment weapon, the ability to fire a minister or a president. It's a very powerful. If we completely remove that, practically speaking now, their ability to actually implement oversight will be. Right now, that's not very popular because of politics
because
involved,
of the nature of the current situation. Okay, so Ekuru, do you agree with that? Do you agree with what the senior counsel is saying? I mean, that impeachment is and therefore should purely be left to the two chambers of Parliament?
Yes and no. Because as he rightfully said, that we have got a bure kabisa parliament today. And even members of the parliament themselves, many of them have confessed that actually this is the worst parliament we ever had. For example, the reason I do not agree entirely with Abdikadir is that if you look at, for example, the key witness Mwengi Mutuse, the man who, I mean, allegedly is a lawyer. He said he's a lawyer.
Allegedly, Bona.
Okay, he said he's a lawyer. Fine. But he was asked these questions, not just me. He was asked this question directly, that as a lawyer, there are certain things as a lawyer we expect of you.
Yeah.
You see, this is a man who brought charges against the Deputy President, Rigathi Gachagua.
Yeah.
But he could not substantiate. He kept on saying, we. I believe. It appears so. This is a person who could not even, articulate. He did not provide any evidence, for example. And some of the members of Senate actually asked very tough questions, which were not answered. So for me, the question really is, was that really a fair trial for Rigathi? Yeah, and that's why there is a window of opportunity for him to say no. The way I was misled, for example, let's look at Article 145, Sub-Article 5,
okay,
which says that he shall present himself, he must appear, shall, and be represented. Now,
so this is both.
It's both, because, you see, regarding nobody chooses when to fall sick.
Yeah.
You can have a heart attack now, you can faint, or whatever the case may be. Yeah. But the Constitution, the wording in the Constitution, even before we go to the spirit, is that you must afford this man an opportunity to defend himself.
Okay.
Just the same way Mutuse came and gave evidence.
Yeah.
And there was a window. I know there's a 10-day period, which was lapsing on Saturday. And because the importance of this office, we could even sit on Sunday if need be, or even that Saturday, as Speaker Kingi had actually suggested, that there is an option for us to sit on Saturday. And then hopefully the accused person can actually come before court, because that already is an infringement of Article 50 of the Constitution to fair hearing. Okay, so now, when you look at the totality of what was happening, let's go back to the National Assembly. You have parliamentarians who said, we signed this impeachment on the promise that one of our own will be appointed a deputy president. And they were referring to Kindiki Kithure. This is the MP for Imenti Central. Now, you want to tell me, really, did that man interrogate the charge sheet against Rigathi Gachagua? He never interrogated at all. He never put his mind into saying, okay, this allegation of undermining, for example, the president, this charge of undermining the president, did the supervisor, like Justice Elisha Ongoya, Advocate Elisha Ongoya, rightfully asked him, did the supervisor complain that I'm being undermined? There was no affidavit from President Ruto that my deputy is actually undermining me. It's a factor of evidence.
Okay.
Yeah.
But in the Constitution, that's what we said in our topic today.
Yeah.
It's the spirit
and
the letter of the Constitution. In the spirit and letter of our Constitution, does it expect that the National Assembly and the Senate will actually do their job? Right?
Absolutely.
Such that when Mwenge Mutuse, for example, comes up with his motion and is seeking support, that the 1/3 members of the National Assembly who append their signature will have looked at the charges. They'll have interrogated the charges and said, yes, I think we have something here that I support this. That's expectation, right? Second expectation is that in the hearings in the National Assembly, right, that the members of the National Assembly who then vote on that motion will be voting after having interrogated the charges brought before. That's the expectation. Spirit. In the Senate, where the hearing then takes place, where the trial takes place, the expectation is that even the examination and cross-examination of the witnesses who come there, the senators will be looking at it and looking at not politics, but looking at what's just and what's not just. That's the expectation, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay.
Remember,
it end there?
Remember, Latiff, Senate at that time sits as a high court.
Yes.
Meaning, it's actually like it's a trial chamber. National Assembly is the mention chamber. So we are mentioning this case, we are presenting prima facie, this is a case of, although they also ought to have interrogated and say, okay, do these charges actually make sense? Yeah. Does it meet the threshold? For example, when you say a man has stolen 5.2 billion. Now, and there is reason to believe that he may have committed a crime under national or international law. But is there, for example, a report even to the DCI that actually a crime has been committed? There has to be some concatenation of events that leads to you concluding that actually a crime has been committed, either nationally or internationally. Now, there was absence of all that. So the reason we are betraying the spirit, even the letter, by the way, and the spirit of our constitution, is that we have got a very lackluster, fakeless parliament, leadership that actually does not at all interrogate anything.
Okay.
They are, and also we have heard, I mean, again, this is Kenya, Latiff, as you know. We have also heard that they were paid to just sign that petition. And, this is not rocket science. Well,
Kenya's parliament.
No, you see, Latiff,
Yeah.
I don't know, Latiff, you may shake your head, but the same way Mutuse said to Kenyans and parliament, believe me in what I'm saying. So you must also believe me that parliamentarians were paid.
If we follow just the legal argument you put across and strengthen the need for evidence, is there evidence that they were given money?
Well, is there evidence? Is there evidence that he was undermining?
Yes, and you're a lawyer.
Yes, I am a lawyer. Yes. I'm a lawyer, and I do a lot of litigation these days. So I cannot go to court if I cannot substantiate.
No, but by the way, I have also heard the rumors that many of them had not seen the motion before they signed those things. But could I come back to a question you asked, if you don't mind, which was, did they do what was expected of them to do? And the question I think that's critical is, what exactly was expected of them to do?
And by whom, really?
Because I think what one of the challenges we have two challenges. Right now it's very raw. There's a lot of raw politics. There are people who are pained now, rightfully so, because of what they see as clear injustice.
Yeah.
And we have, as Daktari said, a parliament that does not give a lot of confidence because of just who this 13th parliament has been. So and then we have a country that is very, because of the wonderful work done by lawyers in the country, especially in terms of fighting for rights, or in this constitution. We have a country that is very well used to the court process, the requirements for very high bars under the court process. So these things, in my opinion, color our expectation of what was going to happen in Parliament. Look, Parliament is made up of politicians, not renowned jurists. Number two, the main currency in Parliament is politics. True, politics and law have a lot of relationships. In fact, they say law is the son or daughter of politics, because Parliament is where those laws are made. But think about it this way: there are crimes that were charged yesterday, and one or two of them was actually upheld.
Yep.
Is anybody going to be fined? No. Is anybody going to prison? No. Will anybody go out later and say, I can't be tried for this case because I have already been tried in another? No. So these are different systems. So unfortunately, we are holding the standard of one system, which is very high standard, our court process, to another system which is a different system. Was there a ruling or a judgment delivered yesterday? No, it was a vote. So if today you wanted the judgment of yesterday's case, there's no judgment. It's just people voted, and in the old days, it was actually by acclamation, unless somebody asked for a division. So I think the key thing, and let me again try and confirm. Look, we have a lot of politics involved. We have a lot of unfair action going on. But if we were to look at the design of our constitution, and our constitution is not designed specifically for this particular moment in terms of the deputy president or our president or our governor, it is supposed to be for posterity. So think about it this way. 20 years down the line, if you had a president who was obviously unfit to run in terms of and you had a very good parliament, not the 13th parliament, you had a very good parliament. And that parliament did everything by the book.
They rightfully impeached that president.
Rightfully impeached that president. And then that president went to their local court in their county to one judge and got that stopped. Now you have a president who has been impeached, who is in office, and not the deputy president, and not impeached and out, but actually in office. You have a very unstable political system.
But
set up. Yes. And then it will go through, the entire process. So let me remind you something. in I think 1997. I think it was 1997. When Matiba challenged Moi an election petition, he was told,
serve him in person. What did that lead
to? Changing the requirement that we are not going to use process to defeat a substance. And Prof knows very well, the Constitution has simplified the requirements for a lot of process. Most lawyers will, actually almost all lawyers will agree that even if they think the court should get involved, the court should not sit as an appellate court over what was done, or actually as even the trial court of what was done. The court should look at the constitutionality of the process, the fairness of the process, ABCD. So most lawyers look at it from an interference to check the process.
Okay.
Now, if we were to use process from the High Court all the way to the Supreme Court to deny the country a very critical tool of accountability, because the current parliament is unpopular, or because the current parliament, Mheshimiwa, has done a bad job in prosecuting this case, we are doing injustice to our constitutional setup.
Okay. Our conversation continues with Senior Counsel Abdikadir Mohamed, who was the first chair of the committee oversighting the implementation of the Constitution after its promulgation in 2010, and Dr. Ekuru Aukot, who's also a constitutional lawyer. He was the CEO of the committee of experts that wrote Kenya's constitution, and has been involved in drafting several other constitutions across the continent, where Liberia, South Sudan, you are in the Maghreb after the Arab Spring, and so on and so forth. Now, we are looking at that matter, and Abdikadir has brought in a serious issue here, that the spirit of the Constitution here was that the impeachment process is a political process. It's a process to oversight the executive. It's a political way of oversighting the political heads of the executive, right? If they misbehave, then the people's representative through the National Assembly and the Senate shall take action, right? And there are several safeguards. The high threshold. 1/3 of members of parliament have got to okay a motion to be brought into the House. 2/3 of members of parliament have got to say, yes, there's ground to impeach. 2/3 of the members of the Senate have members of the, not even delegations, this one. It is all members of the Senate. 2/3 of them have got to say, yes, there's any of these grounds is strong enough to meet the threshold, constitutionally set threshold for impeachment. It's a political process. The question comes, though, when you have a rogue parliament, like you both gentlemen have said, you have a parliament that does not know head or tail, cannot tell its feet from its toes, right? So a parliament then that doesn't do the job as expected of them to do. Don't you think then the person being accused deserves an opportunity to have someone else to check?
Absolutely. You
and
see,
we have the judiciary for that.
Yeah. So Latiff, politics does not take away the legality or the constitutionality aspect of it. And that's why, in the constitution making process, or in the constitution itself, articles, there are many articles, the Bill of Rights, for example, in Article 50 talked about fairness. If you are going to try somebody, it's not the politics, because we know our politics is completely messed up. It is tribal, it's regional, it's balkanization. The very, very charges that Rigathi Gachagua was charged of, that of ethnic mobilization or whatever. In fact, if you are to remove the name Gachagua from that charge sheet and replace it, say, with Ruto, the list will probably be longer. Or replace it with any of the politicians, the list will be longer, especially those from rural constituencies. Because for them, the mobilization is around tribe. And there's nothing absolutely wrong with identifying with members of your community or your ethnic group. I think the problem is when you make it negative. Now, if you're going to try somebody because of that, and if you look at the character and nature of our politics in Kenya, it's very tribal. There's nothing criminal about that per se. Okay? Only when you're mobilizing the tribe against another group or tribe, then it becomes criminal. But just to identify that I come from this region, like for me, you can't take away the fact that I'm a Turkana. But I'm proudly Kenyan, but of Turkana extraction. Just like you cannot take away the fact that Abdikadir is Somali, or Ziti here is Luo.
On a light side, there was a rumor when we had hired when the parliament said Dr. should be the CEO.
Yeah.
There was a rumor, and it's never been confirmed, that former President Moi was told this and said, "What? Katiba to be written by a Turkana?"
No, it was not a rumor. No, he said it actually. No, he said it. What Katiba can be written by a Turkana? That's no, seriously. He said it. He said it. I mean, let's not talk about the dead. I mean, but actually, he did say it. That's exactly how.
We had a good laugh about it.
Yes.
In Muga.
In this country, people do not look at, for example, your competencies.
So what you're calling, maybe our rotten politics, is the reality of our politics.
It is the reality of our politics. And that's why, for me, you cannot lock away the opportunity of a person who has been lynched politically, as in the case of Gachagua. And I'm not holding his brief. The truth for the matter is Gachagua was lynched politically. We don't even know what went wrong between him and in fact, if you are really to compare this presidency and the previous presidency, it makes Uhuru an angel. Because if there is one person, I think, who even disrespected openly is president. It was actually now President William Ruto, when he was deputy to Uhuru Kenyatta. But Uhuru Kenyatta, in his magnanimity, probably out of respect for the presidency, did not want to move an impeachment.
Or maybe he didn't have the numbers.
Well, he had the numbers. He could have marshaled the same way Ruto has marshaled. But I think if you are really to compare, the two presidencies, I think it really has exposed the underbelly of Ruto as a very bad person.
So then, in your argument, Dr. Aukot, if then you have the judiciary and you say that this also can end up in the judiciary, in what stage, at what stage, and in what shape and form? Because you see, like what Abdikadir is saying, if we were to look at it, from that angle, then it would be about the process. The process being followed. Was the process duly followed? What do you think? What do you say? Where is the judiciary?
At the end of the day, Latiff, you have put me on trial. You have charged me. You have trumped up charges. Some of them, all of them almost unsubstantiated. Even from the key witness himself, as you saw. He looked very silly. He was like, you wondered, where did he stumble upon his elementary law, honestly, even as a lawyer? And so I think the question really is, if you must put somebody on trial, follow the rigors of the law. Follow the Evidence Act. Follow treat him.
Is that what you guys expected Parliament to be doing?
Well,
it's like you expected Parliament to understand the law. You cannot guarantee that Parliament will then have lawyers as members.
You can't say
who will think about it. If you wanted that, Dr. Ekuru Aukot, why take impeachment through Parliament? Why not just say establish a commission, a special tribunal,
actually,
that will be judicial, that then will look at it that way?
Let me tell you why Rigathi Gachagua was politically lynched. If you look at the process of impeachment, ideally, there ought to be, the language in the question is there may be a select committee of about 11 members who will then go and interrogate these charges, return a report. And that could have been, for me, a more elegant way. And I'm juxtaposing that to the importance of this office of the presidency. Because remember, as we said earlier, this is a president in waiting. It's not just anybody. It's not just any politician. This is a person today, if the president collapses, actually will take over the reins of power and actually be the CEO of this country. So we ought to have attached, we're going back to the question of the spirit. What would have been the best way to go about this? Not to make the Star Senate a committee to impeach Gachagua, because you needed to have attached importance. If you remove this person, what are the possible consequences? Because he is charged of being a tribalist. But today, I think the mountain is more united now, more than ever. The mountain is very much united, whatever you want to call it. But I think, for me, wisdom ought to have reigned on the speaker, on the senators, to say, let's tread very carefully on this issue because of the implications. At least let's give an opportunity to a select committee to interrogate these charges, return to us their verdict.
You should have put that in the Constitution.
It is there. It is there.
Not as optional.
No. It is there.
You should have made it the requirement.
So maybe, Eric, and I agree with most of what Dr. said in terms of, either this particular trial or the challenges. But I think the question you ask is very critical. Look, ultimately, this is a political forum, and we had the choice to say in the Constitution, when we were making the Constitution, once there is an allegation for an impeachable offense, remove this and take it to an independent. Just like the article before this one deals with a tribunal set up for incapacity.
Yeah.
And the one before that deals with an election petition at the highest court in our country.
Yes.
In this particular instance, the Constitution has given this to the Parliament. So, for example, as I said, lawyers in this country naturally gravitate towards the courts and a court process. But ask yourself, if tomorrow Daktari or one of the lawyers in his office, now there's no impeachment process in the concerning, for example, a minister in the National Assembly or in the Senate, and then they decided this particular minister is not fit for office, I am going to impeach him, and they draft a very beautiful case and go before the High Court and say, Mr. Judge, I am moving your court because I want to impeach Minister Eric Latiff because he's unfit. And I have lined up all the witnesses, and I have lined up all the evidence, and assuming just in that case that we all look at the evidence and it's perfect,
right,
and we all get the best witnesses,
right,
would the court say, I agree with you and impeach? No. The court will say, my friend, this is not the home of impeachment. We have no powers to do impeachment here. Go to Parliament. Where if you have other issues, let me just, if you have other issues, let's see, but impeachment, go to Parliament. The second is Parliament is a very powerful institution. Or the executive, for example. Supposing there is an election petition of a ward rep going on somewhere in a magistrate's court, and Parliament decides, we don't like the way that is being handled. We will handle it at supermajority levels in the House and the Senate. So we'll take part in that function. Most people would laugh Parliament out of. So the point I make is these are different systems. So most lawyers understand we have something called an adversarial system. Our criminal or civil law process in courts is adversarial. In other words, it relies on Daktari representing one person, I representing the other person, and you, Eric, being an arbiter who is not party to this process, listening. And that we will be very adversarial against each other.
As opposed to?
As opposed to, say, inquisitorial, which is what either the French or the Islamic law has, which is that the court actually goes out of its way to look for the truth. In our system, our courts don't look for the truth. The judge could very well know that this is actually not right, but if you have not pleaded it, if the person who is starting this case has not said, I want ABCD, the judge can go out of this and grant you those things. So imagine now how that would look to somebody from the inquisitorial side. They'll say, how can that be? This is a court. It's supposed to give justice. And here you are saying the English setup is, no. You cannot go. And the lawyers in this country will be very comfortable in saying that you have not pleaded this, so we cannot answer that question. Or I am the judge, I can't ask this question. So this is now a different system, and it's a different forum. And unfortunately or fortunately, irrespective of how painful the current setup in our parliament is, or the current political temperatures are, and I agree with us, with many people who say our current parliament is the worst parliament probably we have ever had. Even the 1988 Mulolongo product. But the reality is our constitutional. Yes, sir.
Council, are the two of you suggesting that these processes that we have just witnessed were either a gross illegality or completely unconstitutional?
No, not really.
No. So the point I make is we might not be happy with our current parliament.
Yes.
But tomorrow, if that current parliament passes a law, we must abide by that law. And our current
Well, we can
setup.
reject it if it's a bad law.
You absolutely can
Yeah.
reject it if it's a bad law.
Just like we rejected the finance
There you go.
bill.
We can challenge
But
it.
there you go. But the courts are given the power to strike down laws. The courts are not given powers to strike down impeachment, because impeachment is closed.
So what you're saying,
No, I
what
don't-
you're saying,
I
the
don't-
bottom line, hold on, Daktari, the bottom line of Abdikadir, what you're saying is that the lesson from you in this class today
Yes.
is that we have two systems.
Yes.
We have a judicial way
Yes.
and we have a political way
Yes.
of removing a president in our constitution.
We have three systems.
We have three.
We have three. We have a medical way.
Okay, we have a God way.
Actually, we have five. Obviously, you can resign.
Uh-huh.
You can die.
Yes.
You can be incapacitated medically,
Okay.
in which we have another procedure, not the courts, not parliament, but a process that is under the constitution. We have an election petition,
Yes.
which is a court process.
Courts.
And we have a political process called impeachment.
And the
now,
political
unfortunately,
process-
the lawyers and because of the unpopularity of our politics and our politicians, the push is to remove this impeachment process from parliament and give it to the courts. And
you're
I'm saying
saying-
that's unconstitutional.
And you're saying
That's,
no,
that's not acceptable.
this one is purely
This is
political.
purely political.
So then
Yes.
I will ask the question and you'll start with that in the next hour after the news.
Yeah.
So then why put such legal thresholds for political process?
Very good point.
CGO, constitution breach of
Very good-
constitution.
very
breach
good
of-
point.
It should have been, we don't just like this
No, no,
guy.
no, Eddie-
Very good-
and
very
you can
good- very good
marshal
point. Can I-
two-thirds.
Yeah, very good point. So Daktari will
Well,
I'm sure have a lot to say about
let's
this.
do the news.
Okay.
You'll start on that. If really this is it's a purely political process,
Yes.
then why have such high legal thresholds? Why not just say,
actually
if
quasi-legal.
Parliament feels that this president or deputy president is so unpopular, and you can marshal a supermajority, just get the guy out of office.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.